Jigga on the East Coast, you got, Rick Ross, Rick Rock on the West, and they just share send the files. My sister, she already had the money though. Helped her get like Infinity Q45, that fast.
Yeah. The big built figure of G-Funk, the man who set the sonic standard for the West Coast, the sound architect, who shaped an entire era. That is DJ Quik. But that still is not enough to describe the wealth of this man. The owner of a classic car garage with an estimated total value of $1 million. A luxurious 425-acre mansion in Los Angeles. A lavish lifestyle no different from Sean Diddy Combs. How did DJ Quik rise from nothing? Why did a man who was once nearly swallowed by gangs, the legal system, and the system itself become an icon? The entire West Coast now respects. Today we step inside this one-of-a-kind real estate compound, exploring DJ Quik's fortune and his extravagant lifestyle that pushes beyond every boundary. Compton childhood, born inside gang territory. First, let us take a close look at how this West Coast legend carved his place in history. Not through stage lights, not through shocking public moments, but through silent decisions made in an environment where one wrong step could cost an entire life. David Marvin Blake, known by the stage name DJ Quik, was born on January 18, 1970, in Compton, California. He grew up on the west side of Compton at 436 West Spruce Street, an area blanketed by gang activity, where violence was not the exception, but the daily rhythm of life. At that time, Compton was a hotspot for the Bloods and the Crips, and for a child to be pulled into that orbit was almost unavoidable. Quik was the youngest of 10 siblings. His childhood was marked by absence. His father left the family when he was very young, and throughout his life, Quik met his father only once. Music became his refuge. His mother owned a large record collection, and by the age of 2, Quik was already drawn to the sound of funk and soul. By age 12, he began playing instruments not as a hobby, but as an escape from the tightening reality around him. In 1986, at just 16 years old, Quik dropped out of 11th grade to pursue music. However, this decision came. At the same time, his family suffered a devastating financial collapse. The family entered a severe financial crisis. His mother lost her home to foreclosure and was forced to move to Louisiana in search of new opportunities. Quik chose to stay behind in Compton, continuing to chase music while facing homelessness for 3 years. It was the worst period of his life. Entering hip-hop, he chose the name DJ Quik and deliberately removed the letter C from the word Quik as a subtle declaration of his connection to the Bloods. The irony was that the letters CK in Quik could still be interpreted as Crip, but as his reputation began to spread, many in the streets overlooked it, because Quik was no longer a name easily touched. In 1987, he began selling homemade mixtapes around Compton. No label backing, no security system. His standout product from this period. The red tape quickly circulated through the local community and helped Quik build a loyal fan base by the late 1980s, enough to draw the attention of record labels. Profile Records approached Quik in 1990 and offered him a contract officially placing him on a professional path. Around the same time, Eazy-E also had his eye on Quik and was willing to front $1 million to bring him to Ruthless Records. But Quik had already signed with Profile, and the label immediately issued a cease and desist, ending a potential collaboration that could have changed the entire balance of the West Coast. Later, Quik would look back on his time at Profile and call it both a blessing and a curse. The label helped him rise quickly, but also frequently underpaid him, forcing him to fight constantly for his rights, even as his name grew bigger. His debut album, Quik is the Name, released in 1991, took him to a new level. The album reached the top 10 and later went platinum with hits like Tonight and Born and Raised in Compton. But as his music career soared, Quik's gang ties and volatile temperament began to carry consequences. A 1991 performance at the Event Center in Denver became the first visible crack. In an area known for heavy gang activity, Quik was provoked on stage and responded with confrontational gestures and lyrics. Tensions escalated quickly, from 40-ounce beer bottles being thrown into the crowd to acts that humiliated the audience before a massive brawl erupted, forcing Quik and his crew to flee the venue in chaos. 2 hours later, Denver police arrested Quik at a hotel near Stapleton. He was charged with misdemeanor assault. His image began to fracture. But in the very moment the public viewed him as a gang-entangled rapper in trouble, DJ Quik's real power was being revealed somewhere else entirely. Not on stage, but in the studio, where he functioned as producer, engineer, and mixer, controlling sound at its roots, with his name appearing consistently in the credits of Snoop Dogg, Tupac Shakur, Tony Tone, and Whitney Houston, generating income from royalties, production fees, and back-end deals, a quieter, but far more sustainable form of wealth than that of rappers who lived only under the spotlight. Collapse. Losing discipline. Losing everything. However, that path was never easy. November 2, 2003 marked the true beginning of a downward spiral that DJ Quik could not reverse with talent alone. According to reports recorded in San Bernardino County, California, the incident occurred inside the home of his sister, who was 42 years old at the time. While she was sleeping, Quik entered the house with 2 other men. A family confrontation masked by the phrase "internal issue" quickly crossed the line of control. According to court records, Quik repeatedly struck his sister in the face during the argument. The woman escaped and went into hiding, but one of her children witnessed Quik holding a handgun and searching the house to find her. That moment was not just violence. It was the total collapse of a family structure that had been fragile from the beginning. No father, only siblings. And now musical success became the catalyst for irreparable financial conflict. The reason later given revolved around an extortion-related dispute. In a 2011 interview with Thesis 50, Quik stated that his sister had turned her back on him when he became wealthy, attempting to demand money and exert financial pressure. He highlighted a bitter paradox. The same woman who once bought him guns when he was young later demanded a share of his musical success. Although the incident occurred in 2003, the legal system did not formally close the case until June of 2006. At San Bernardino County Court, DJ Quik was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon, a serious charge, but the initial sentence was relatively light. Quik was sentenced to 45 days in jail to be served only on weekends. The court cited the fact that the victim's injuries were not considered severe. At that time, the system still treated it as a personal matter, a controllable mistake, and Quik's reputation clearly contributed to the leniency. The fatal mistake came immediately afterward. Quik failed to comply with the sentence. He did not report to jail on schedule, directly violating the terms of his sentence. When that happened, all leniency ended. Judge Keith Davis increased the punishment to 150 consecutive days in jail. On June 21, 2006, DJ Quik officially entered San Bernardino County Jail. He was released early in October of the same year, after roughly 4 months, leading many to believe that his career had survived the storm. In reality, the cracks had already begun to show even before he entered jail. The album Trauma, released in 2005, sold only around 81,000 copies and peaked at number 63 on the Billboard chart. That figure marked a clear commercial decline compared to his earlier work, showing that creative disruption had already taken root before sentencing. From an industry standpoint, Quik had already lost key support systems. Arista and Profile Records had effectively abandoned him as early as 1998, placing him in an unsupported phase just as the industry was changing. When the jail sentence was activated, things worsened. Initially sentenced to 45 weekend days, his failure to comply with parole conditions led Judge Keith Davis to increase the punishment to 150 consecutive days. On June 21, 2006, DJ Quik officially entered San Bernardino County Jail and was released early in October after about 4 months. The greatest damage was not the time served. It was what Quik lost during that time. Money began flowing out in ways that created no value. Legal fees, court costs, frozen projects, decisions made without him. When you go to jail, you do not just lose freedom, you lose control. The outside world does not pause for you. The music industry keeps moving. Contracts keep getting signed. Power relationships keep being rearranged. For Quik, this was especially dangerous because his power did not come from public appearances, but from controlling sound behind the scenes. When he was separated from the studio, removed from the operational flow, that power immediately eroded. Revenue from royalties, production fees, and back-end deals slowed. Industry influence declined. And when he came out, he did not return to his former position. After jail, Quik was forced to almost start from scratch with the Fixers from 2007 to 2008. It took 2 to 3 years for him to gradually stabilize again. Not because he lost talent, but because the system kept moving while he was left behind. And that was the true cost of that moment. Rebirth, the bunker phase. After hitting the lowest point of his career around 2006, Quik understood one thing clearly. If he kept playing by the old rules, he would be crushed. Major label contracts that once brought fame had become nothing but a burden. His experience with Arista 10 years earlier was a bitter lesson. Control was stripped away, cash flow was choked, and creativity was turned into a scheduled product. Quik did not come back to repeat that mistake. Instead of rushing into a new deal, he returned to his old circle. People who knew him before fame arrived. AMG, who had worked with Quik since 1991, came back. Together, they formed the Fixers. This was not a nostalgic move, but a strategic one. Working with old partners, reduced risk, leveraged existing networks, and more importantly, created a workspace where no one had to prove who they were. At the same time, Quik changed how he made money. In the past, he had poured too many resources into engineering services work that demanded extremely high standards, but delivered profits that did not match the effort. He had spent massive amounts on equipment studios and sound upgrades only to receive fees that barely covered costs. During the bunker phase, Quik cut that out. He shifted his focus back to solo albums where ownership and royalties belonged to him. What stands out is that Quik did not lose his identity during this restructuring. G-Funk was still there. The talkbox still spoke. Synths still carried the cruising breath of Compton at night. But this time, his music was thicker, more alive, with more real instruments brought into the mix. It was no longer the sound of someone trying to prove he was still relevant. It was the sound of someone who had lived long enough to understand what he needed. Quik accepted a new reality. Less spotlight, fewer interviews, fewer appearances. But in return came more durable power. Decision-making stayed in his hands. Release schedules were under his control. Collaborations were selective. And most importantly, no one could push him out of his own sound. From the lowest point in 2006, DJ Quik rebuilt his career quietly but steadily. He kept producing, kept collaborating, kept appearing in major credits all the way through 2025. His net worth is estimated to range from $3 to $15 million, not because of a lucky break, but because of the persistence of someone who understands that surviving in this industry is sometimes more important than standing at the top. For Quik, prison did not destroy his career. It became a catalyst pushing him toward a more mature version of the Compton conductor, a man who no longer needs to shout to be recognized because his sound still speaks for itself. From $3 million to a multi-stream empire. It took only 4 years after his release for DJ Quik to reclaim his footing. For decades, DJ Quik has almost never shown the public his entire living space. No house tours, no home flex videos, no interior showcase photos. What people know comes only from rare profiles and a few scattered interview details. Yet those fragments paint a very clear picture of the kind of luxury Quik pursues. He has been described appearing at gatherings on rooftop penthouses in Los Angeles, where city lights stretch below like a massive control board. No address needed, no specifications required. Just the understanding that it is a high place separated from the ground, where Quik is no longer pulled into the noisy collisions of his past. This is not flashy luxury, but position. The position of someone who has been in the game long enough to choose where he stands. Alongside that is his private home and personal studio. Two spaces that almost merge into one in Quik's life. For him, living space cannot be separated from workspace. Living space must serve the creation of sound, and sound in return must be protected from outside curiosity. This is why luxury for Quik does not lie in size or market value, but in control and privacy. The right to close the door, the right to work without interruption, the right to silence. Another factor often overlooked when discussing DJ Quik's wealth is real estate. Not because he does not own it, but because he has never used it as a tool to tell his story. According to aggregated sources like Celebrity Net Worth, Quik is believed to own multiple properties in California, and the value of these assets has increased over time. This is especially notable when placed in the context of the real estate market in Compton and surrounding West Coast areas. Today, even average homes in Compton are trading in the range of $450,000 to nearly $1,480,000. In that context, a portfolio of just 1 to 3 properties, if held long-term, is enough to form a significant portion of the net worth of an artist like DJ Quik. This is not a flashy investment style, nor a short-term play. It is a quiet accumulation built on time, location, and patience, fitting the personality of someone more comfortable behind the scenes than under the spotlight. This approach leads many to mistakenly believe that DJ Quik is not wealthy in the conventional sense. The truth is, he never needed to prove it. Because if real estate is the outer shell, Quik's garage is where his identity and enjoyment of success are stored. When speaking of the garage in DJ Quik's story, one should not imagine a showroom-style display space where each car sits under lights like a piece of art. Quik does not live in that world. Sources describing his assets often mention his classic car collection as something massive in a personal sense rather than a boastful one. A detail frequently cited is a garage holding 9 vehicles, referenced in social media discussions as a notable contribution to his overall asset picture. Among them are cars with a very personal imprint. An image once posted on Instagram showed Quik next to a customized Ford Expedition, modified to his own taste, reflecting his exact spirit. Not buying cars to keep them stock, but buying them to adjust, to turn them into something that fits his own style and sound. This is not the mindset of a display collector, but of someone who sees vehicles as an extension of personality. Quik is also known to own a Cadillac Corniche, the same model associated with Tupac Shakur. This detail carries more than material meaning. It is a cultural symbol. The Corniche is not a car of speed or cutting-edge technology. It is a car of presence, of slow glide, of letting posture and sound speak for you. Quik's attachment to this model clearly reflects his aesthetic, where luxury does not need to announce itself. Although there is no complete public list of his entire car collection, Quik's organization of a DJ Quik car and bike show shows that his interest in vehicles is not passing. This is not the act of someone buying cars to prove status, but of someone who truly lives within that culture. For Quik, cars like sound are meant to be felt, not counted. If real estate and cars reflect how Quik holds and enjoys value, his true assets lie where cameras cannot zoom in. They lie in the catalog. Quik's music catalog cannot be photographed or toured, but it exists, operates, and generates income every day. Hundreds of recordings, dozens of albums, 3 decades of uninterrupted credits as a producer, engineer, and mixer for the biggest artists across generations. This creates a revenue stream very different from that of a traditional rapper. Not dependent on constant hit releases, no need to be on stage every night, no need to trade health or image to stay visible. Quik's income comes from royalties, production fees, and back-end deals, contracts the public rarely sees, but that outlast any spotlight. When tastes shift, the catalog remains. When new generations rise, the credits still run. When media goes silent, the music keeps playing. From the outside, DJ Quik's life may look quiet. No asset scandals, no wealth flex rumors. But look closer, and it is a very specific kind of luxury. The luxury of someone who has passed through chaos, understands the value of control, and chooses to invest in things that do not need to speak loudly. Quik's luxury is not walking into a mansion to overwhelm others. It is walking into the studio, closing the door, and knowing that the sound he creates today will still feed him years from now. Quiet, unflashy, but deep enough that no one can replace it. Studio gear, the insane spending. When it comes to DJ Quik's lavish lifestyle, what surprises many people is not the mansions or the cars, but where he poured the most money throughout his career. That place is the studio. Not as a hobby, but as a survival strategy. For Quik, sound is not just art, it is an asset, it is power, and it is something that must be protected at all costs. From the very beginning, Quik never believed in cheap solutions. He believed in equipment. He believed in hardware. He believed that if you wanted to create sound thick enough to roll down LA boulevards warm enough to survive across generations, you could not compromise on quality. And the price of that belief was spending that many other artists would call insane. The heart of this system lies in the Neve 1073 preamp. This is not a symbolic decorative piece but a core working tool. The Neve 1073 is famous for making vocals and bass warm, thick, and deep in a way that is very hard to recreate digitally. With an original purchase price of around $2,000 to $4,000 per channel, a full rack of 4 to 8 channels was already a heavy investment. But by 2025, as the value of vintage analog gear surged, a complete Neve rack could be valued anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. This is the kind of asset Quik does not sell. He keeps it the way he keeps his own voice. If Neve is the spine, then the SSL 4000E is the brain of the entire studio. This is the mixing console tied directly to the DNA of G-Funk. Punchy sound, powerful dynamic control, and a workflow that allows command over every detail of a mix. At the time of purchase, an SSL 4000E with 24 to 48 channels might have ranged from $25,000 to $50,000. Today, a well-maintained vintage console can be valued at $100,000 to $250,000. For Quik, this is not a mixer. This is a map of power. To preserve what he calls the magic of sound, Quik also invested in the Ampex ATR 102, a legendary 2-inch reel-to-reel tape machine. In an era where everything can be recorded inside a computer, maintaining an analog tape system is both expensive and impractical. An initial purchase price of $8,000 to $15,000 was only the beginning. By 2025, the value of an Ampex ATR 102 could reach $20,000 to $40,000, not including annual tape costs of around $5,000. But for Quik, this is where sound is locked in, where recordings gain weight, breadth, and longevity. On the melodic side, the Roland JD 800 is a key piece. This synthesizer is tied to the signature portamento sliding melodies of G-Funk. Not overly expensive at launch, around $2,000 to $3,000, but by 2025, its value still holds steady around $1,500 to $2,500. That says something. Quik does not buy gear to show off. He buys what works. For beats and sampling, Quik does not trust a single machine. He runs both the Akai MPC 2500 and the MPC 62 in parallel. Two machines, two eras coexisting. Each originally cost around $1,500 to $3,000. But today, a vintage MPC pair can be valued between $3,000 and $6,000. This is where beats are built like a car frame, layer by layer, without rushing. The Technics SL 1200 turntables are essential. 2 units used for sampling and DJing. Each once cost only $500 to $800. But with their cultural value and near-immortal durability, by 2025, a pair can reach $1,000 to $1,600. For Quik, vinyl is not nostalgia. It is data. On the digital side, Quik still uses Pro Tools HD as the central command system. Not because he loves subscriptions, but because it is the industry standard. Initial setup costs range from $2,000 to $5,000, with annual maintenance running another $1,000 to $3,000. This is software, but it is not cheap, not to mention outboard gear. The URI 1176 compressor, Pultec EQs, analog machines that shape sound through voltage, not algorithms. Initial purchase for this system may range from $5,000 to $15,000, but today their combined value can reach $20,000 to $50,000. This is where Quik fine-tunes, not fixes, mistakes. When everything is added up, Quik's core studio, including console preamps and tape, can reach a value of $170,000 to $390,000. Synths, samplers, and turntables add another $5,500 to $10,100. Software, outboard, and accessories range from $25,000 to $60,000. And annual maintenance, the part no one talks about, falls between $20,000 and $50,000. In total, just the core setup alone sits between $200,000 and $460,000. This is not waste. This is a business model. For DJ Quik, the studio does not just create music, it creates assets. And in his world, sound is the ultimate luxury. The man who never left. At this stage of his life, DJ Quik no longer needs to prove how rich he is. No need to show off mansions. No need to flex car collections. No need for net worth numbers inflated year after year. For Quik, wealth no longer lives in what others can see, but in what he can still do. When the spotlight fades, when the market changes the rules, And when many of his peers have gone completely silent, Quik is rich because he still makes music every day. Not the kind of music made to chase trends, catch markets, or prove relevance, but music made as a survival habit, like a skilled craftsman returning to the workshop every morning, even when no one is waiting outside for the finished product. For Quik, the studio is not a place to create hits, but the place where he retains the final control over his own life. When everything else was taken from him, sound was the one thing he never lost. There have been many people richer than DJ Quik, many artists who once stood on brighter peaks. But not everyone keeps the ability to create value when the tide turns. Quik no longer dominates radio, no longer rules the charts like he did in the early 1990s, but he still exists in the most durable layer of this industry, in the credits in the catalog in mixes, where listeners do not know who is behind them, yet feel something different from the very first notes. If you place Quik next to Mike Tyson, the contrast becomes clear, yet fascinating. Tyson built his empire outside the ring. Massive real estate developments in the desert, highly visible symbolic projects that are easy to see, easy to explain, easy to turn into headlines. A physical empire where value is measured in square footage revenue and spectacle. Quik is the opposite. He built his empire inside sound, no gates, no signs, nothing to show on Instagram. Yet it exists everywhere, woven into the music many people grew up with, continuing to flow even when his name is no longer mentioned every day. There may never be a flashy house tour video of DJ Quik. No one may ever film his garage with a sensational title. Many people may not even know he is still making music. But that does not make Quik's empire smaller. It only makes it more invisible to those who do not know how to look. And perhaps that is the biggest question left behind by DJ Quik's story. If no one sees your garage, if no one stands outside applauding what you are building, if what you create exists only in silence behind the scenes, inside credits most audiences never read, does what you are building still have value? DJ Quik answered that question with his entire life, but every viewer at this point will have to answer it for themselves.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and the truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.